pressure is causing some of them to migrate to Europe. Again, the migrating population is small, and as a result of it, it's less diverse than the original population. Or those that are migrating into the America are even less diverse. And the evidence is striking in this respect. If you look at migratory distance from Africa and the degree of, say, genetic diversity, you can see that the most diverse population is in Africa, the least diverse population are Native American in South America. And it is not restricted to genetic diversity. If you look at folkloric diversity, you can see that folkloric diversity is diminishing with migratory distance from Africa. The further you are from Africa, the smaller is the number of motifs that we see in the population. So this is not necessarily genetic. It can be genetic, can be cultural, different elements that are operating in different time periods. But again, you may ask yourself, why is it so important? It is so important because diversity is associated with conflicting implications for development. On the one hand, there are beneficial effects on creativity and innovations. Diverse population is benefiting from cross-fertilization of ideas, cross-pollination of ideas, complementarity in the production process, and this is conducive for innovations. But on the other hand, diversity is associated with adverse effects on social cohesiveness. More diverse society tend to be less trustful, to suffer from disagreement about the desirable public goods, and as a result of it, it typically suffers from civil conflicts. So there are conflicting effects of diversity on economic development, suggesting that if there are positive and diminishing effects of diversity on innovations, and positive and diminishing effects of homogeneity on social cohesiveness, there is a sweet spot level of diversity, an intermediate level of diversity that will be conducive for development. And this implies that this migration out of Africa had a long-lasting impact on economic development today. In fact, if you look at the partial R square of this migratory distance from Africa, it explains 16 to 25% of the variations in inequality today. Okay, so sweet spot level of migratory distance from Africa that affects economic development. And the evidence are very striking in this respect. In panel A, if you look at the level of diversity and population density in 1500, you can see this hump-shaped relationship and the level of diversity that is conducive for development. If you look at panel B, this is the relationship between diversity and urbanization. Again, sensational hump-shaped relationship with the same countries at the peak. If you look at panel C, income per capita in the past 200 years, again, hump-shaped relationship, a sweet spot level of diversity. But interestingly enough, if you look at panel A, which is population density in the year 1500, the countries that are at the peak of the hump are Japan, Korea, and China, countries that do not appear to us as optimally diverse. But this is a different time period. This is a time period in which technological progress is relatively slow and social cohesiveness is much more important. And these are the societies that are balancing properly between the benefits of diversity in the context of innovations and the detrimental effects on social cohesiveness. But if you look at panel C, if you look at a country that is at the peak of the hump, this will be the United States. Namely, we move into a much more demanding technological environment. As a result, diversity is much more important for economic development, and the trade-off is occurring in societies that are more diverse. And this is true even if you look at ethnic groups across the globe, all the ethnic groups in the ethnographic atlas, you will see this sensational hump-shaped relationship between diversity and population density in the past 12,000 years. So broadly speaking, if you think about the wheels of change that I mentioned before, The size of the human population, the composition of the human population, and technological progress, as I said, they operated relentlessly in the course of human history, in every corner of the world, no exception. But in different corners of the world, they rotated much faster than others. And this was based on geographical conditions and their impact on institutions and cultural factors, and it was based on migratory distance from Africa. This affected the speed of the rotation of technological progress and its impact on population size and population composition. And as a result of it, some societies reached this critical threshold of investment in human capital much earlier than others, experienced a demographic transition earlier, and moved into the sustained growth regime earlier than others. So when you think about the factors that affect comparative development across the globe, institutions, culture, geography, and human diversity, as I said before, institutions will explain about 2 to 9% of the variations, cultural forces about 20%, human diversity between 16 to 25%, and geography 30 to 40%. That's the decomposition of inequality as we see it today. But perhaps most importantly, deep-rooted factors, factors that were determined in the distant past, explain 86% of the variations in inequality today. And if you would like to resolve inequality today, you really have to focus on forces that operated in the distant past. So if you think about our future journey, the question is, of course, whether in fact history is a fate. I just suggested that much of the inequality that is present in the world was determined hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and even tens of thousands of years ago. Am I contributing to the dismal science, quote unquote, in the sense that am I generating additional dismal predictions about the ability of societies to overcome their initial conditions? Not at all. In fact, the journey of humanity suggests that history is not a fate. It suggests to us that by considering the history, by understanding our history, we can devise policies that would mitigate inequality across the globe. And in fact, growth-enhancing policies, unlike, say, the Washington Consensus that suggests that one policy will fit all less developed economies at once, the suggestion based on the journey of humanity is that, in fact, growth-enhancing policies ought to be designed individually for each country. They ought to be country-specific, geography-specific, and institution-specific. The policy for diverse society is very different than the policies that will be advocated for homogeneous societies. The policies for societies that were blessed by geography that foster long-term orientation is very different than the policies that will be designed for societies in which, in fact, long-term orientation was derailed by geographical conditions. And more broadly, key for sustaining what one may define as the age of abundance in which we live is going to be further decline in fertility, adaptable education, gender equality, diversity, and tolerance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor GALOR. Παρακαλώ παραμείνετε στις θέσεις σας. Please remain seated. Λήξη τελετής, αποχώρηση του πρίτανη, των αντιπριτάνων, του Προέδρου του Τμήματος Οικονομικής Επιστήμης και του Καθηγητή GALOR. End of ceremony. Directors, Vice Rectors, the Head of the Department of Economics and Professor ODED GALOR exit the hall. Ακολουθεί δεξίωση στο φουαγέ. Please proceed to the reception. Thank you for being here. Ευχαριστούμε που ήσασταν μαζί μας. Καλό σας βράδυ.